As we're being constantly reminded by our friends at NBC, the Olympic Games get underway tonight with a series of pre-opening ceremony competitions, including a snowboarding event that U.S. rider Shaun White pulled out of, saying the course was too dangerous. In the long lead up to the start of the Sochi Games, the focus has been all about the bad, from threats of terror to toilets that don't flush. But the Russians are pushing back. Let the griping begin. As soon as journalists hit the ground in Sochi, out came the horror stories.
My hotel room, as a matter of fact, the window fell out on my head and I couldn't get it back in.
All week, journalists and athletes have been sharing their complaints via Twitter, including this one from the CNN sports team, which booked 11 rooms months ago. This is the one hotel room Sochi 2014 has given us so far. Shambles. Another tweeter wrote that his hotel lobby has no floor, but does have a nice headshot of Vladimir Putin. Then there was this, a sign in a bathroom imploring people, please do not flush toilet paper down the toilet. Another Chicago reporter posted this picture of the water that came out of her faucet. But those issues are minor compared to threats of terror. The head of Russia's Olympic Committee says they've increased security.
After the discussions and the special things and accidents in the last weeks, we did 20-30% more than in the last Olympics.
Now airlines are being warned that terrorists might try to bring bomb-making materials in through toothpaste tubes.
I'm really surprised because we just touched down and just saw all the soldiers next to the runway. That was, wow, crazy.
Meanwhile, the American press seems particularly focused on the issue of stray dogs. Authorities have been exterminating the strays in an effort to clean up the streets.
There are a huge amount of stray dogs here, and authorities try to control them as they can.
But animal rights activist Dina Filipova says there's nothing new about rounding up street animals. Meanwhile, Russian authorities say they are confident all the negative attention will disappear just as soon as the Games begin. My next guest has attended a total of 16 Olympic Games. Paul Varadian participated in bobsled and skeleton competitions in the 1980s. After the breakup of the Soviet Union, he was asked to serve as Armenia's Olympic liaison and has traveled to Sochi many times. And I should say, Paul, we are friends, so I know from having heard you talk about Sochi, you've been there at least 3 times, I believe, that this did not come as a surprise to you, that these blunders and mistakes and haphazard building has taken place.
No, Emily, this really doesn't come as any surprise for any Olympic Games, for that matter. There's always the last-minute construction items that have to take place. And you also have to remember that this is a $50 billion project that's been dropped on a community that's only about 40,000 people. You know, it's the Games aren't really in Sochi. They're in a town called Adler, which is about 45 minutes south where the airport is. And this is like essentially building a Disneyland in a very small community overnight.
Yeah, let's get a little bit of lay of the land, because you've got some pictures of you. I didn't realize how tropical this place is. I mean, Sochi itself is tropical. There's you on the beach.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Russia's 11 time zones, and this is the only place in Russia where there's actually is palm trees. It is a subtropical climate. It's about the same latitude as Boston, although obviously we don't have the same weather. And it was a resort in the Soviet times where the Soviet workers used to go to relax. And there are snow-capped mountains. It's the very end of the Caucasus, and so they've tried to combine that into a resort. Yeah.
So the mountains are about 40 minutes away. Or
yeah, they're about 45 minutes by high-speed train up to the mountains. They're not snow-capped at that point. They're actually still tree-lined. The mountains that you see here in the picture in the distance are actually in Georgia, because the Olympic Village is only 1 mile from the Georgian border.
Wow. So you told me something interesting about journalists. This is the first time that they're being housed by the government. What's the difference now between other Olympics?
Yeah, that's correct. In all the past Olympic Games, we've always had media centers, international broadcast centers and journalist broadcast centers. This is the first Olympic Games where the organizing committee has actually agreed to house the media. And so there's 2 media villages. There's one in the coastal cluster along the water, and there's one up in the mountains. And so what you're seeing now is basically the journalists are tweeting back of their conditions inside these inside these accommodations that were created for them. Normally, they would have stayed in private hotels outside.
So they wouldn't have, it would have been a completely different, they wouldn't have been in new building, new construction.
Exactly, and they're being subject to the same rush to finish the construction as the rest of the site is.
So you brought some pictures of construction that was, I think, in 2011 and 2012. I mean, back then it looked like it was possible to have it finished, but you've expressed concern about some of the quality of the materials and that kind of stuff.
Well, you know, I mean, this is a massive undertaking. This is the largest construction project in the world. It's being done in an area which has never seen anything like this. It's being done in a country in which they don't have these kind of resources. So it comes as no surprise that there will be lots of issues that will crop up. But I'm sure most of them will get ironed out.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's take a look at some of the, I think these are housing units for the athletes that you took pictures of.
Yeah, and these are actually private small hotels in the town of Adler. This is where tourists would stay. This is housing that's being built up in the mountains for the athletes. Mm-hmm. This is the Grand Hotel Poliana. This is the ice skating complex under construction last year.
Wow.
Most of these are finished, actually, but of course the detail work, the punch list work is not done.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about the Russian security? I mean, we focus on all these things. I mean, how do we really know? I mean, any Olympic, we saw, you know, Mitt Romney was criticizing England, and of course everything went smoothly there. Do you have good faith that the Russians will pull this off in a secure way?
I do, just because of the massive scale at which they're doing. I mean, the Olympics will always be an attraction for a terrorist organization simply because of the nature of it. But I think in Russia, in this case here, you probably have the security is overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And I know the athletes will be safe. If there would be any problem, it would actually be in the public realm.
Do you think there's a gleeful nature to this? I mean, the Westerners are being a little bit too harsh on the Russians, especially the journalists. I mean, we've got a couple other complaints we can put up there. I mean, you know, we love to kind of, journalists anyway, rag on the Russians.
We like to focus on these kind of things, but I can guarantee you that after tomorrow, it will all change. It'll all be on the athletes and the sports.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This will be forgotten.
So you miss being there? You've been
I do miss
15
being there.
to 16 other?
It's the first one I'm not attending. I've started a new business, and it's taking up a lot of my time. And I'm also semi-retired at this point from the Olympic movement, but it's just been great. It's absolutely great.
All right. Paul Varadian, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Emily. Pleasure.